Alright, hello everyone. Today's video we're going to go over the basics of getting started in Autodesk Maya. So now the first thing we're going to do is just take a look at the interface here. And opinions are what they are, but this is definitely one of my favorite interfaces overall. The only thing I don't like about this interface is that this attribute editor on the right side of the screen ends up becoming one of the weirdest things about the software, but other than that, I love the way this looks and feels in general. So now I'm going to go over here. By default, you probably have this tab open. You have all these buttons here, and you have all of these buttons here, and you have all these menus here. You've got all this here, you've got all this here, which again you can change to other things over here, but don't worry too much about that. Now the first things first, I just want to go over here is you've got all of these buttons here. If you click and hover over these two lines here, it says change which shelf tab is displayed. This is the modeling tab by default. You've got curves and surfaces here. So like you've got like your circle here, you got like a square here. You can just do an EP curve and so on and so forth. But now you can move this over to a sculpting tab where you have sculpting features. Rigging features, definitely not going to get into that. Animation. Rendering, this is definitely something you'll probably be using unless you're exclusively just using this for modeling. You have all your lights in here. And you've got some standard material stuff here. And you've got some batch rendering. You've got some render diagnostics. You've got some render sequence stuff here. You're going to want to know about that. Effects. Got your emitter here. You got your 3D fluid container here. 2D fluid. A lot of stuff I've never messed with myself. FX caching. You've got your this, that, and the other thing. Custom, obviously doesn't have anything right now. Arnold, which is a native renderer that they bought out and put into Maya at one point. Create light portal, create mesh light, create area light. Ooh, sounds like fun. Okay. Mash, not going to get into that. Motion graphics, and then XGen. Not going to get into this either, but as you can see, we got some very grassy looking things here. Okay, so poly modeling, you're probably going to want to start here. This is where you can just very quickly just click here and just draw out a cube. And if you hit the F key, it will zoom in or frame your selection. Now your basic controls, if you don't know, are if you hold Alt and left click, you will rotate around your selection. If you hold Alt and middle click, you will pan the camera. And if you're like me and you don't like crunching your finger on the scroll wheel, I have a Logitech mouse and I have buttons on the side of my mouse, and I have one of them programmed to double click and one of them programmed to middle button. So if I just Alt and hold that one side button, it'll do that for me without hurting my index or middle finger on the scroll wheel. Now Alt and right click will do a nice smooth zoom in and out. So I've got all I need. While holding Alt, do left click, middle click, right click. And I gotta say, I think these controls are very intuitive. I think that makes a lot of sense. If you go into, you've got your show here, and you've got render here. You're going to want to have viewport 2.0 on. If you change it to Arnold, you've got some crazy rendering stuff going on. So if you don't know what you're doing, don't worry about that at all. With show here, you've got a bunch of things here you have visible in the scene. For the most part, you don't need to worry about this right now. Lighting, you've got the ability to use all lights in the scene. Again, you've got default lighting in here at first. Don't worry about it. Shading, you've got simple shading all here. You can change this to wireframe view. You can do flat shading all. X-ray if you want to see through it. You've got all these features in here. And then view, you can select your camera here. You can frame selection and frame all. You've got camera settings. You've got all kinds of things. Just know that that stuff's here. The shading, when I go back to shade regular, let's just get rid of that X-ray. Now, if you hold right click, you've got this pie menu. I'm holding the right click, and then you just go select it over here, just move it here and let go, and you're in object mode. Now in other programs, you would just hit like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to select your components. Here, just right click and just go face. And now I'm selecting faces with left click. Right click and go to edge. Now I can select my edges. Right click, go to vertex. Now I can select my vertices, and I can hold shift to select other vertices. If I hold control, I will deselect. Now if I hold control and shift, it will add. So if I hold control and shift, I will add to the selection without taking away from it. Now if I select this one thing here, and if I hold shift and I click and drag while holding shift here, what's going to happen is I'm going to reverse the selection. Now I have these two selected and not this one. So just keep that in mind. Now you're going to have a whole bunch of like basic modeling tools up here. If you go over to the modeling kit tab over here, if you don't have it, if you don't know, you can just click on this thing over here. You probably have it there. You might not. If not, if you go into Windows here, you've got things here like modeling editors, UV editor, modeling toolkit, animation editors, and so on and so forth. Just keep that in mind. Outliner, node editor. Now one thing that's great about Maya that I really love about its interface is that it very intuitively just kind of has what you need right in front of your face. Like if I go over to mesh and click on that, you've got all these options here, and they all are nicely aligned with a nice icon next to them. Easy to see, easy to remember. You've got your booleans, combine, separate, retopologize, fill hole, triangulate, a bunch of cool tools here. Edit mesh, you've got all kinds of good modeling features here. Again, this is all really nicely laid out. And then mesh tools, some more important tools here like your connect tool, boom, boom, boom. You go again, you've got multi-cut tool, boom, 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 boom. And there you go. Mesh display. You got some more stuff here. Lock normals, harden edge, soften edge, so on and so forth. But now here's another thing. I mentioned right clicking. First of all, if you tap spacebar, it will do this. Simply tapping spacebar will change your view from 1 view to 4. Simply tap spacebar again. If I hold the mouse over this one, tap spacebar, it maximizes it. Spacebar again, tap it over here, and so on and so forth. You also can just go over here to these buttons. Click, click, click. You've got a 2 view here, very nice. You've got your outliner here, which is going to show you all your stuff in your scene, like your lights, object, cube that we made, so on and so forth. But for now, let's just click on that again to get rid of it. But now if I press and hold the space bar, this menu is extremely powerful here because all those mesh tools we were talking about earlier are right here. Edit mesh, right there. Mesh tools, right there. Mesh display, curves, surfaces, deform. It's the same as the stuff up here. So it's just a different way. Like when you're first learning the program, I'd recommend just going up here because it's just easier to do. But then later on, when you get sick of going up here, you can always just hold spacebar and it just makes it a little faster to get to it because you don't have to move up here. Right here, you've got a grid button. You can turn the grid on and off very easily right there. I mentioned earlier some of these shading options here. If you click on these buttons here, you've got wireframe, smooth shade all right here. Use default material, textured view, but we don't have any textures on there. Use all lights, but we don't have any lights in the scene, so it's just showing up black. Over here in the left, you have the select tool. You've got the lasso tool, which is also a selection tool, and a paint selection tool. Can't say I use that a lot. Now you have your basic move tool, rotate, and scale. In general, most people don't click on these. They usually use the hotkeys. It's W, E, and R. And if you hit Q, it's just a basic selection. 3ds Max uses the same hotkeys, so basically in a QWERTY keyboard, you've got Q, W, E, R for select, move, rotate, and scale. It's just logically laid out like that because those are the first letters on your keyboard. That's about all I have for today. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if this video was helpful for you at all. Thank you for watching and take care.